and welcome back. Diabetes Eating and Wellness, provided by L-Well. We are a group, of course, of registered dietitians, certified diabetic educators, and today we are back with our lead instructor for the series, Julie Nance.
Hi, I'm Julie. In case you didn't come to the first one, I just want to give a quick little information about me. I am a diabetes educator. I'm also a registered dietitian. Dietitian first, diabetes educator second, of course. But I'm also a member of the club. I have type 1 diabetes. I was diagnosed almost 30 years ago. So, wow, when you say it like that, whew, I'm getting old. But I've had it for a long time, and I've learned how to live with it and how to live healthfully with it. So that's what I want to talk to you today about, eating healthy, especially from a dietitian's point of view, but also from a member of the club's point of view, so that you can understand how you can live healthfully too. All right, so for today's agenda, we're going to talk about the basics of a healthy diet. I know a lot of you are thinking, oh, healthy diet, ugh, don't want to do it. You would be amazed how wonderful a healthy diet can be and how good you're going to feel when you've been following that for a while. We're going to talk about the carbs, the fats, and the proteins. These are our macronutrients. So we're going to talk about our macronutrients today and how those may or may not affect your blood sugar and when those can affect your blood sugar. And then we're going to go over food labels. I know you've probably already started reading some of the food labels and you may know a little bit about them, but we're going to get a little bit more detail so that you can understand how to read those food labels to really help to control your blood sugar levels.
Okay, Julie, so let me pose a couple questions to you, because as a patient, but as an diabetes expert patient, I really want to know your answers to some of these common questions. For starters, what does healthy eating mean to you?
It means living healthy. So healthy eating is just a part of, to me, it's a part of a healthy lifestyle. So if I want to live a healthy lifestyle and become healthy or to maintain good health, then healthy eating is just a part of that. And it doesn't mean that I have to eat vegetables at every single meal. No. But it's nice to include those at some, but it doesn't mean you have to eat perfectly every single time. It's healthy eating to me is having a healthy relationship with food and understanding what can negatively affect my body and what can positively affect my body, and sort of stay toward those positive foods most of the time. I didn't say all the time, most of the time.
Okay, so then, the burning question that is on all of our minds is, what did you have for dinner last night?
Oh, I had baked spaghetti.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what was in that meal?
In that meal, it was some chicken breast. White meat is a little bit lower in saturated fat than dark meat. So it consisted of chicken breast. It consisted of tomato sauce, which I got from a jar. It consisted of angel hair pasta and low-fat mozzarella and low-fat Parmesan. That was it.
Okay, great. Okay, so I know we're getting into carbs, fats, and proteins today, and so we're going to break down meals just like that. Fun, I can't wait. Well, it doesn't sound like you're having a hard time with healthy eating anymore, but what do you think is the hardest part about healthy eating?
Goldfish.
You love those.
Goldfish and red velvet cake.
Oh, right. We all have our weak spots,
Yeah.
So that's the hardest part is avoiding those or eating them in moderation, or what's the hardest part about those foods?
When I was first diagnosed, I was diagnosed 2 days before Thanksgiving. So my Thanksgiving was in a hospital on an IV. I didn't eat. But when the dietitian talked to me, and she's the reason I became a dietitian, by the way, she said, what's the hardest thing? Christmas is coming up. What's going to be the hardest thing for you to deal with at Christmas time? And my immediate, without any thought, was red velvet cake. My aunt made the most incredible red velvet cake completely from scratch. Delicious. Whole milk, a lot of fat, a lot of unhealthy stuff, but absolutely delicious. So she said, you can have a small piece about that big and no icing. If you've had red velvet cake, you know the icing kind of makes it. So what I did was I took away the biscuit that I would normally have. My grandmama make really good biscuits. I took away the biscuit and instead had a very small piece of red velvet cake, and that made me happy and that made me satisfied. So the hardest thing is not getting to not, actually it's not that I don't really get to have them, it's that I choose not to have them. So sometimes I do want that red velvet cake, but I leave it for me for my birthday and I leave it for Christmas, and that's it. So that means that for the entire year, I look forward to my red velvet cake. And when I do get it, it is the most wonderful thing because I know that I've been waiting for this for a year. So it's a treat for me.
Well, that's a really interesting perspective too. And, just to kind of going on an aside here, here we are in this land of abundance where we can have anything we want at any time, but actually not having what we want during certain time frames makes it that much more exciting when you finally are able to do it. It's almost like you earn it, like, oh, good, you can still have it just strategically.
And it tastes so much better.
Mm-hmm.
When you have this excitement build up for it, it is the best thing you've ever had.
Oh, that's good. Okay. All right. So my mouth is watering already. So we know that those treats are part of the healthy eating because, you explained how to work them in. But I mean, really, what do the other foods do for you? Why we are so focused on eating. What is the reason for that?
Let's see. What can food do for me? Number one, it's going to give me energy, especially the healthy carbohydrates are really good for energy. Protein is going to help with some muscle mass, but it's also going to help with the immune system. And in today's world, we know we want a really strong immune system. So protein's a good part of that. Those vegetables and the fruit contain what's called phytochemicals and antioxidants and fiber. Fiber is fabulous for helping to control blood sugar levels. So we want an adequate amount of fiber in our diet. So the foods, these healthier foods can actually build our immune system, help us feel better. They can actually help us to lose weight. Now the food is not going to help you lose weight, but it's how much you eat is going to help you to lose weight, and the exercise that you do is going to help with weight loss if that's your goal. So food can actually help you just to feel better and to stay healthier, especially in today's world. We kind of need that a little bit.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's a perfect introduction here for today's chat. So I'm excited to see what it's all about.
So here we have two lists of foods. There's healthier foods and there's less healthier foods. So you can still enjoy the less healthier foods, but let's leave those for treats ever so often and not every single day, every single meal. I love ice cream, but I don't eat it at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I don't eat it every single day. I do like to have it every now and then so it becomes a treat. So those healthier foods are, of course, going to be your nuts and your seeds, your vegetables and your fruit, and your healthier animal proteins. If you do eat animal sources, then they're your healthier animal sources. Your whole grains are a great source. The less healthier are going to be those processed foods. Anything that's found in a bag, in a box, or a can are considered processed foods. And yet it's okay to have some canned foods and some boxed foods every now and then, but we really like those natural foods as much as possible. Now, your bag of chips, when I say in a bag, we're talking bags of chips. So yeah, okay, it comes from a potato that is a vegetable, not necessarily what we would like you to have. We would rather you actually eat the potato rather than the bag of chips. And a lot of other things that are added full of sugar and even full of sodium too can be less healthier for you. All right, quality versus quantity. How much can I have? What is quality? So what is quality to you? When you think of a food, what do you think of as quality? And usually what I think of as quality is those whole foods. Any type of whole food really is a higher quality because it's not going to affect blood sugars as strongly. They're going to have more fiber in them. The whole foods, like your fruits and your vegetables, are higher in fiber, which is going to slow down digestion of those carbohydrates a little bit, and that's going to cause a slower rise in your blood sugar levels, which is phenomenal. Now, some foods do have a higher impact. So white rice has a higher impact than brown rice does on your blood sugar levels. So we like those a little bit. We like the brown rice a little bit more than the white rice. I had a patient tell me one time that brown rice tasted like cardboard. I get that. But white rice just tastes bland. So I would rather have the taste of cardboard than the taste of bland.
Ooh, that sounds like a great place to enter some flavorful phytonutrient heavy vegetables to kind of jazz up either scenario.
Absolutely, and some good herbs and spices too. You play around with those herbs and spices so that you can find what really tastes good to you. I'm a lemon and pepper freak. So I buy lemon and pepper seasoning and I use it on almost everything. I love it. Little spicy and a little tart at the same time is delicious. Quantity, so how much do you have? Something that's higher in carbohydrates, we know that carbohydrates are going to cause blood sugar levels to rise a little bit higher. So foods that are higher in carbohydrates, and a large amount of those foods is going to cause an even higher spike in blood sugar levels. So we like to keep things in moderation, everything in life in moderation, including the types of foods that you are consuming. So there are some minor factors too that can affect, your gut bacteria, and I know we call it the microbiota or the gut flora. So we talk about the gut flora often and how it can affect our body, and a lot of science is going into this. We still don't know everything yet, but we are learning so much more about the gut microbiota or the gut flora to understand that it can really affect even our blood sugar levels, because the bacteria that's in your gut helps to digest some of the carbohydrates in the form of fiber that you consume. So raw versus overcooked. This is going to affect raw vegetables versus an overcooked vegetable is going to affect the fiber content. So it can break down some of those fibers to where it's not as high in fiber. Plus, if you boil it, then some of the nutrients are going to leach out in that water. So you're going to lose some of it. Do you have to eat raw vegetables all the time? No. But the best way to eat cooked vegetables is steaming them is one of the better ways. Stir frying is another way that's going to preserve some of the nutrients in it and keep some of the fiber from being broken down so much. Okay. So unprocessed foods. These are your foods. Let me really quick define what processed means. If you eat nuts from a jar, those are considered processed. They may be raw. They may not have any seasoning on them, but they are considered processed, but they're minimally processed. And those are fine. But when we look at things like chips and canned beans, those are highly processed. Those are much more processed. But we like those unprocessed foods a lot better. They're higher in nutrients, many of them are higher in fiber, and they're much better for you. And they're going to affect blood sugar levels a little bit differently, not have as high of an effect on blood sugars as some of the processed foods are going to have. And you can see from this picture of the different types of unprocessed foods that we have here. This is our animal sources, some of our animal proteins, and then our nuts and our seeds and fruits and vegetables and whole grains. And here's a beautiful picture of all of those wonderful unprocessed foods. You're going to see this list in your information that you receive. This is a healthy food list. There are other options that you can include, but this is the healthier food list. This is the one that we want you to look at most of the time. No, you don't have to look at it every single time, but at least most of the time might be a really good option to sort of keep with this one. All right, macronutrients. What is a macronutrient? When you hear the word macro, you tend to think big, right? Something that's macro, it's large. That means, it doesn't mean that we need these foods in large amounts, but it means they're found in our body in larger amounts. So proteins, carbs, and fats are our macronutrients. So we know that we have larger amounts of fat in our body than we do vitamin C, right? We also know that we have larger amounts of muscle in our body than we do vitamin C. Carbohydrates are stored in our body for energy. It's stored in our liver and it's stored in our muscle as energy. And we use that later on for energy. But there's also some of carbohydrates in the form of glucose that is circulating in your blood at any point in time. And I think by now you have a good idea of what blood glucose is, don't you? So all of our calories, these are calorie providing. All the calories come from the macronutrients. There is one other, it's not really considered a nutrient, it's not, but it does provide calories, and that's alcohol.
All right, thanks, Julie, for the explanation about the macronutrients. And that's where I want to just ask you guys to look at our healthy food list again. Here you can see that we've snipped out just the fats so that you can see how the list really works. I like this because it allows you to easily differentiate the predominant macronutrient, you know, the carb, fat, or protein, which foods have the most of those things. So on this list, you can see under each little green heading, it will also be labeled as carbs, fats, proteins, or a combination of two of those. You'll also see that the way that the structure of each of these lists looks is that it will tell you, how many servings per day. Of course, your dietitian might change that a little bit or tweak that a little bit around your lifestyle and medication. But also kind of talking about like, hey, look, in an ideal setting, what would be the optimal nutrient? It says here, minimally refined, meaning unprocessed. Certainly in the case of fats, we're looking at cold pressed, obviously, or if organic and non-GMO fit your budget, well then heck, great, give it a try. You do not need those foods in order to have a really healthy blood sugar, okay, and a really healthy outcome. But if you can, if that is part of your value system, then we embrace that as well and go for it, okay? But get the highest quality food that makes sense for your budget, and we get the same health outcome over the long run with diabetes. From that standpoint, we've got each food labeled here. So if, for example, an avocado is the first one, you'll see that it's got the 2T or 1/8 whole, okay? And so that's where you're gonna see the food, and then you're gonna see the serving size. The next one is butter. Yeah, that's on the list in a small amount. So we've got the 1 little tea or the 1 teaspoon or the 2 teaspoon whipped, okay? Then you're gonna see the chocolate, okay? We have that in there too, next to 1 ounce. So that you see the pattern right there. Then I want you to look at the bottom of the column. It says 1 serving equals 45 calories or 5 grams of fat. What this means is that after avocado or butter or chocolate, you have the serving size, and that serving size is roughly equivalent to the 45 calories and 5 grams of fat. This is the way that it works both with the fats and with the proteins and with the carbs. So we're going to go to the next nutrient so that you can also understand how to use that column. Okay, so similar to the fats, let's look at the protein columns and figure out how to use this, because this can also be a little bit confusing. So of course here we've got proteins. Obviously it's a protein. Your servings per day might change a little bit based on what you've talked about with your dietitian. And of course they're giving you a very elaborate way of describing the most unprocessed foods of all time. Don't feel like you have to have those foods if it does not work for you. Okay, so we're going into animal protein. Sometimes the foods here might be a surprise. For example, we have some of our lower fat cheeses, for example, on proteins, because most of the calories are coming from protein. You can see the first one says cheese low fat is 1 ounce. Similar to the last slide, on fats. You can then look at the bottom of the page and see one serving as listed would be 35 to 75 calories, 5 to 7 grams of protein, 3 to 5 grams of fat, or 0 to 4 grams of carbs. And that's going to allow us to kind of loop these things together, or loop these servings together. Because when you see servings per day at 9 to 10, that sounds like an enormous amount. We're not saying you have to eat 9 to 10 servings, but if you look at that instead of 1 ounces or 1 ounce or 1 ounce equivalents, then that makes it work. So with a low fat cheese, you see 1 ounce. Theoretically, you could have 10 of those a day, but we want to vary the diet a little bit. So let's look at 1 ounce or 1 ounce equivalent. You can also look down, for example, past the cheeses and see eggs. So you'll have 1 egg would be the equivalent of 1 ounce, which would then equal 1 serving as listed on the bottom of the page, 35 to 75 calories, 5 to 7 grams of protein, etc. So you'll go to fish, shellfish, 1 ounce. Of course, you can have more than that at one time. We like to direct you to the palm of your hand, or approximately, or work it out specifically with your dietitian, depending on the size of your bear claw. So then you'll go into meat, also written the same as 1 ounce. That way you can add a few together to hit that 9 or 10 ounces a day. Same with your poultry. Your plant proteins are on here as well, and they would be the ones that may introduce a couple of grams of negligible carbohydrates here, depending on how much you eat. And your protein powders are on the list as well. And you'll really have to look at the label on your protein powders, because that is a highly processed food and they do vary quite a bit. So we'll reference that for that item. And then let's go to carbs, because this is where it gets exciting. And, at least if you're a diabetic educator, can we see the next carb slide?
I want to say something real quick.
Okay.
1 ounce of an egg is not the same as 1 ounce of a piece of cheese. So not the same size. So you can't take a block of cheese and cut it and say that this size is equivalent to the size of an egg. So
right. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, right? Cheese can be pretty high calorie.
Yes, it can. Yes, it can. So we don't, cut a big hunk of cheese and go, that looks like it's about the size of this egg. So this is 1 ounce. It's weight. So that egg is going to be, especially if it's a boiled egg, is going to weigh a little bit more than that cheese. So keep that in mind.
Okay, guys, so here we are on carbohydrates. This is the second page of your 2-page healthy food list. Okay, and this is where we get into the carbohydrates. I see this as really kind of 2 sections. We're going to start with the first section, non-starchy vegetables, on that left-hand side. You can see that it's labeled carbs in the green section, and that it says servings per day, and it says 7 to 8 on this particular list. Your list might be different. Work it out with your dietitian. You'll also see that you have all your favorites here, your green leafies, your broccoli, your cabbage. I'm just kidding. I'm hoping that they're your favorites. But as you go through here, the thing that's different with this side of the healthy food list is that the serving size is not right next to the food. The serving size for all of them is kind of generic, and it's at the bottom of the whole column. So you'll look and see 1 serving is equal to about a ½ cup of most of these foods, unless it's a cup for just the raw greens. And they equal about 5 grams of carbs, give or take, if you're using those measurement tools. Thank you, Julie. So that being said, you don't have to worry about referencing each vegetable. We take a roundabout approach here because of the low amount of carbohydrates to keep you sane, okay? And so you don't have to look up each one individually here. They're roundabout the same. You will see that some vegetables on this list, like carrots and beets, some people are surprised that they're in the non-starchy section. And for most of us who eat a moderate amount of these foods, they would technically be considered on the non-starchy side, though we recognize that they are a little borderline. Okay, so if you're the type of person to mow down a bag of carrots at your desk, you're not alone. Just touch base with your dietitian about a good strategy for that, okay? All right, now we're gonna get into our traditional carbs, our starches. Our starchy vegetables, fruits, and whole grains typically make up the bulk of carbohydrates for most people on the healthy food list, okay? So your starchy vegetables, that section, you'll see, of course, it's labeled as a carbohydrate. It'll say 1 serving a day. Again, work that out with the dietitian. Usually we recommend a total serving amount of carbohydrates, although some people prefer to have it sectioned off like this, but just refer to your dietitian for your exact amounts. We're looking here, you'll be able to see that it does have regular potatoes, okay? They are even on the healthy food list. It's a natural, unprocessed food, but it does have carbohydrates. So we're gonna learn how to eat it strategically with this list. And Julie's gonna go into more detail about that on the carb counting section. Here you'll notice that mashed potatoes under the starchy vegetable list are labeled as half cup. Again, reference the serving at the bottom of that section, and it says that 1 serving equals 80 calories, or more importantly, 15 grams of carbs. Yay. This is cool because then you're going to go and see the same type of formatting under whole grains or under fruits. Whole grains, you'll go carbs, of course, against the green part of the header, servings per day, give or take, depending on what you work out with the dietitian. And you might say, I want bread. Go to the individual portions section of that, and it says bread, 1 slice, 1 SL. And you'll note that at the bottom of the page, 1 serving also equals 15 grams of carbs. Ooh, it's consistent. So a half cup of potatoes has the same amount of carbs as 1 standard slice of bread. Your bread might be different if you're using a special type. Your fruits are the same. If you go to a fruit section, you see that it is labeled carbs. It gives you a few servings a day. Work it out with the dietitian. The first one is apple, 1 small apple. So we're looking at, oh, perfect. Oh, isn't that great? Thank you. 1 serving is going to be 15 grams of carbs, which is the same as the potato or the bread. Okay, so now you know where to reference all of the numbers, and so that we can use this sheet for carbohydrates. Now let's look back to the front page of your healthy food list for our combination foods on the next slide. So these combination foods are nuts and seeds, and you see on the green heading are proteins and fats. Again, the servings per day will depend on your needs with your dietitian, but you'll be able to see almonds. 6 almonds is going to equal 1 serving. Okay, are you having to count out 6 almonds? No, you can get more like 18ish. Okay, and that's going to be maybe 3 servings according to this list. So that gives you a little bit more play in there. Our dairy and alternatives are there also. So you'll see that this is a protein carb food. The servings per day here are 1. Again, that's up to you and your dietitian. But 1 serving of milk, cow, some people like goat, whatever you've got, 8 ounces is 1 serving. Thankfully here, because you see that it's also a protein, but it's a carb, it's standardized so that you have about 12 grams, which is close to the 15. You know, we kind of call it 1 serving because 12 to 15 is pretty roughly the same. It's not an exact science, but let's say 12 to 15-ish grams of carbs, this 12 grams of carbs in your cup of milk. And so that's where you're going to say, okay, well, this is our good dairy serving amount. And that's going to be the same. You'll have to look at the label if you have an unusual food item like the Fairlife milk, or if you have an unsweetened almond milk, for example, you'll defer to the label if it's an unusual food item. Otherwise, you can use this list for a quick glance, okay? Your legumes are also a protein carb, okay? So this is fun also because you've got the carb amount. Now you'll have your healthy food list in front of you right now, and you'll be able to see the part that got cut off here, which is that 1 serving of legumes is also 15 grams of carbs. So typical bean soup might be 3/4 cup, depending on if it's homemade or store-bought. You have to look at the label, but approximately 3/4 of a cup of a bean soup is also going to be 15 grams of carbs. So this helps you at a glance understand what's in your food without searching on the internet, although I like that strategy too. So, so anyway, this is a quick tour so that you can use the healthy food list, which is going to help us through those next sections on how to estimate carb intake. So you've got a handy list, but you also have Google. So you can use a couple of different tools. All right. So Julie, this is so fun, Julie. We've got to figure out what the carbs, fats, and proteins are here.
I know. So we have a stir fry. Looks like some vegetables, maybe some protein in it. Tell me, Caroline, what do you see in this as far as your macros?
Oh, our carbs, fats, and proteins in a stir fry? Oh, how fun is this? Okay, I see some chicken and I can look back on that healthy food list and say to myself, oh, the chicken's in the protein section. Got it. Okay, so we got protein in here. Then we also have some broccoli and some peppers and some carrots. I can look at my healthy food list and I'll find those under the non-starchy vegetables. We're going to call those carbs, even though they're the non-starchy vegetables. Remember, they're in kind of their own happy category. So that's pretty cool. So I see some carbs and I see some proteins as the major macronutrients here. It's a stir fry. Do you think they added any oil?
I think they probably did. A little bit of olive oil or maybe some canola oil or a little peanut oil for some extra flavor. Possibly so. So there may be about a tablespoon of oil, I would say.
Okay, so that would be our fats. So we've got a small amount of carbs with those non-starchies. We've got our protein, which is our chicken, and it might have a little fat in there too, of course. Yep. But the predominant nutrient is going to be protein, and that's what we're looking for now. And then we are assuming that they stir-fried in oil. Maybe they did it in water. We don't know, but we'll say, let's pretend.
Or a spray.
Ooh, yes, I wouldn't even
use one of the sprays.
I wouldn't even count it unless you really kind of threw it out there. So, so you're going to be able to have a little bit of oil in this, if, or let's assume that there's some oil on that, so that would be your fat. So this would be predominantly protein, fat, and a little bit of carb on this.
All right, now we've got the next one coming up. What do you think about this one? What are our macros, our carbs, our proteins, and our fats in this particular picture?
Well, gosh, Julie, isn't this fun? We just went over this. So we see so much of these gorgeous fruits. So we've got our apples, our pineapples, our grapes. Oh, I'm just hungry looking at it. That apple, I think it's the same one that you have over in your hand, isn't it? It looks exactly the same. So we know
I pulled it from the picture.
Picture perfect. So we've got, we know that those are carbs. We just did that. We talked specifically about breads. So we know that that's a carb. And then we talked about, it looks like milk, although it's in a little teacup there. So I'd say that's a carb protein combination. We also have some nuts on there, which, are predominantly proteins and fats, a little bit of carb too, but predominantly, yeah.
But what is that in the jar?
It looks like some honey.
It looks like honey.
So that honey, what is that?
I think that honey is a sugar. It contains fructose, which is a natural sugar, and anything that's a carbohydrate is a carb, or anything that's a carbohydrate is a starch or a sugar. So honey is going to count as a carbohydrate, and for honey, a tablespoon is about 15 grams. So only about that much is 15 grams. And my husband, when he puts honey in his tea, he does this.
Oh, it is yummy.
Very good. But it can be high in carbohydrates. So a little drizzle, a lot of times, is all you need. It's also quite flavorful. So just a little drizzle is all you need.
Good.
Oh, buffets.
Right.
What do you see here, Caroline?
Oh, how fun is this? All right, so I'm going to start on the top left, and I see some corn. Okay, so corn actually isn't on the healthy food list, but it certainly can be. So let's say if we're looking at corn, we would consider that a starchy vegetable. Some people would consider it a whole grain, depending on where you sit on that. But either way, it is a carbohydrate. So we'll look at a small half inch or I'm sorry, a half ear of corn or so as being our 15 grams. I see sweet potatoes or yams. And so we know that that's a starchy vegetable. So that's our carbohydrate. And then I see some good looking greens there. And so we just went over those, and we know that those are a non-starchy vegetable, a very small amount of carbohydrates in there. Then we move over and I see a whole bunch of different cuts of chicken with the skin on. So this chicken is going to be a protein. Most of the time, we're going to look at, getting the most bang for your buck out of your food, making sure that we keep the saturated fats down. So we did not have the skin on the chicken in that healthy food list. The skin is where the fat is. And so for many of us, we're really watching those fats at the same time because of the saturated fat and the associated risk with hypertension. So I would say that we do have a sneaky fat in here. While we have a predominant protein in that chicken, we also have the sneaky fat in that skin. And then over on the far right, we've got our lovely rice combination here. Looks like we've got almost like a little succotash rice thing happening over there. So I would say that I see some carrots and some corn and some peas all mixed up with rice with this lovely parsley garnish. And I think I'd eat that garnish right up. And so we would say that the rice is a whole grain, no problem, happens all the time, that's real. We'll keep going. So let's say a whole grain is that rice, okay? And so we know that we can look at the healthy food list and figure out how much to have in a serving. It's going to be a third cup. But with the corn and the peas, I would, the proportion of it is smaller, but I know with the corn, we just talked about that being a starchy vegetable, and the peas are going to be back in that legume section. You can simply, with the being that it's predominantly rice, I would just measure it as the 1/3 cup, in order to get the right serving with that. But you can see that we've got a nice blend over there. Awesome. Awesome. I like your measuring cups. All right.
Now let me ask this though. I'm from the deep South, Savannah, Georgia. And when my grandmama and all of my family cooks greens, they throw some fat back in there.
Oh, right.
So what does that do?
All right. So we've got some fat back in there. Geez, we don't do that. I'm from Washington, D.C. We don't make it that.
There's necks or there's fat back that gets put in there.
Right. So now you're talking. It
adds flavor, but what else does it add?
Oh, we got some fats in there. It's right in the title. So certainly we've got to be careful. I have heard some of our patients here in Hampton Roads area are using bacon grease as well. And so if depending on what you cook with it, we've got to spend a little bit of time focused on all the nutrients. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Julie. Yes, there's probably some added fats in the corn and in the rice mixture as well. They are sneaky.
Sometimes we have to keep an eye on what it is that we're eating. And if I can't tell you how many times at a restaurant I've asked the server, can you find out what's in this? Just so that I can have an idea about what I'm getting. I don't always do it. It's not very often, but sometimes I will, just so that I know. Especially when I was first diagnosed, I did it often until I learned, okay, I know that this is made with this is made with this, and this is made with this. So, and then I didn't have to ask it anymore. But in the beginning, sometimes it is a learning curve. All right, our last one. What do you see here?
Ooh, I see a beautiful salmon. Looks like that one's on the broiler or it's hard to tell, maybe on the grill. So that salmon, ooh, okay. Well, we know that is under the protein section. So that, yes, while many of you heard of healthy fats, there are some fats in some of our proteins, but predominant, our major macronutrient is the protein. We also can see, it looks like a little lemon wedge, which I would say would just be negligible. And then we've got, of course, the tomato over there, a non-starchy vegetable. I think that's a pepper and non-starchy vegetable. Broccoli, which would be a non-starchy vegetable, and a cucumber, non-starchy vegetables. Remember, those non-starchy vegetables are all a carb, but just a little teeny bit, okay? So it's mostly protein at this meal.
With this, that looks like raw broccoli, unless you eat 3 cups of that broccoli, which I don't know that too many people do. You will be in the bathroom for a couple of days if you did. But unless you eat that, then really it's not necessary to look so closely at the carbs on the non-starchy vegetables. All right, last one.
Oh, we have another
No,
one.
wait, not the last one, almost the last one.
Oh, I see all kinds of things that are shimmering and shiny. And usually that means that we have some added fats or carbs. So I am looking at a little bit of gravy on this one. I would think that we do have probably a little bit of flour in that gravy and of course a bit of fat. So I'm seeing that we have carb and fat. I also see that we have the skin on the bird here, and that's going to be our sneaky fat there too. And then we have the flesh itself. So we've got that meat that is our protein, and we can see that on our healthy food list. I see some green beans over there. Ooh, and it's the kind with the peppers. I love that. So our green beans and our peppers are our non-starchy vegetables. Again, a very small amount of carbs. You have to have a huge amount for us to even pick it up on the radar. And then of course, oh, do we have a gorgeous little rosemary sprig and some basil on those potatoes?
Yes.
Ooh,
Yes.
so we'd certainly consider those, either non-starchy if you ate a large amount, or you could even just say that that was a negligible seasoning, non-starch seasoning. And then of course we have what looks to be some mashed potatoes. And so of course those are going to be our carb. That's going to be where our starchy vegetable comes in. Is that maybe a sun-dried tomato there at the bottom or something like that? What is that?
It
Maybe
could be, but it could also be sometimes sauces. So how are we going to count sauces, and what would we do those for?
I think similarly to the gravy, I like to look at the shimmer and shine. If my server doesn't really know, what's in the food, or if it's taking too long to get back to me, I might just assume that it is either salt, sugar, and or fat, but certainly salt. So there's a lot going on with some of those sauces. And they are sneaky fats, because sometimes we are looking at the big picture, but not that shimmery shine. So keep an eye out for that, and maybe use daintier portions.
Recently, I had some barbecue sauce, and I've completely forgot to count it because I give myself insulin based on the number of carbs that I eat, and I forgot to count my barbecue sauce in my meal, and blood sugars went up. And I looked at the label, and it was high in sugar and 19 grams of carbs for that particular barbecue sauce for 1 tablespoon.
Fast. It does.
So it affected my blood sugars, and we have to be careful with that sometimes.
Mm-hmm. I like that idea that you had. Oh, good, we have more. I like that idea that you had with the biscuit and the cake, to say, oh gosh, well, if you're having a lot of barbecue sauce, that could be really your carb for the meal, instead of adding the potato at all. Okay, we've got, I do the macros here, and we've got a nice, it looks like chicken to me, but it looks like chicken that's maybe mixed with something else. And I'm needing a new prescription on these glasses. So I'm wondering what you see in there, because I can't imagine that is it carrots?
It looks to me like carrots, and I'm assuming that with the broccoli, that might be either baby carrots. I don't understand why they would put baby carrots with some cut up carrots. And we could say it's sweet potato.
Okay, sure, we'll call it that. That sounds good. So we've got our chicken again here, and that is our protein. Our sweet potato is going to be our starchy carb, or our starchy vegetable, or our carb. And then we're looking at those baby carrots with the broccoli as our non-starchy vegetables. Again, you'd have to eat a significant amount for it to register for us as a carbohydrate. But That is an interesting combination. I'm wondering where they are. Then.
It is. It's a lot of the same color.
Yeah, yeah, that's okay. All right, let's check out the next. Ooh, we
This
know.
is our last one.
Hmm.
We saved the most interesting one for last.
This is not on the healthy food list, but it does have a place in our diet. So, you know, as diabetes educators, in many ways, I feel like we're food enablers. We're going to help people eat what they want in the right amounts so that they can still achieve optimal health. And this is where this slide really comes in handy. As all of you are looking at the slide, thinking to yourself, like, okay, donut, carb, yes, you're right. Same with the chips. I think that that's some sort of kettle corn, maybe mixture, maybe a, you know, Moose Crunch or something like that. I see some French fries. These are all traditional carbs. Of course, they've been fried in some fats. I see a bun for the hamburger there. That's going to be your carb. I see lots of little candies. So that's a combination of carbs and sometimes fats too. You know, I'm not sure what those little candies are there at the bottom. The lollipop is just straight up carb. If you ever get that low blood sugar, that's a good thing to have on hand. We'll get to that later. But then you've got some peanuts there, and there's our healthy, that's on the healthy food list. We've got a combination food of proteins and fats. We've got pizza, so I see carbs in the dough. I see a combination of fat and some protein in the cheese. You know, we've got a processed meat here, that pepperoni would have a little bit of protein and some fats in it too. And so then we've got a, looks like a chocolate muffin. So that's going to be mostly carbs and some fats. And we've got, I don't know what those other little things are. It looks like maybe just a dipped donut, like a chocolate dipped donut over there.
I think that's what it is.
Ah, it's the good stuff. Okay.
White
so
and dark chocolate covered donut.
Whew, we just really wanted to make sure everybody, we had all the possible things. So that looks like a special treat. And that would be predominantly carbohydrate with some fats in it too. Okay, so lots on this plate for sure. Oh, okay. Right. Water break.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll see you in the next video.
Great.